Hey everybody, I'm Sean Buckley with Engadget, and we just got an early look at the Super Nintendo Classic Edition, the follow-up to last year's NES Classic, but for the next generation. If you were lucky enough to get a chance to play Nintendo's last throwback console, you'll feel really comfortable with the new one. The SNES Classic uses the same carousel menu we saw on the NES Classic, with the games listing out in the middle of the screen, a few settings on the top, and save state features down on the bottom. The console is basically a collection of the SNES's most iconic titles, from the original Super Mario World to Super Mario World 2 Yoshi's Island, Legend of Zelda Link to the Past, Earthbound, Final Fantasy III, Mega Man X, and Star Fox. There are so many games on here. If you had a Super Nintendo and you loved a game on it, it's probably on here. Just like the original Classic Edition, the SNES Classic lets you launch all these games at a touch of a button, and they have some extra bonus features too. For instance, you can use save states to go back and help you beat harder games, or use different filtering modes to make it look more like an old CRT TV, or make it look pixel perfect. There are some new features for the new version too. In addition to choosing your aspect ratio and filtering mode, there are frames that surround the game border, so you can have a wood veneer look surrounding your game mode, or just a black screen if you want. Little touches that help it look a little bit more presentable and less like there's just dead space around the game. Nintendo's also revamped the save state system too. It does more than just hold your place in a game. Now, in most titles on the SNES Classic, you can go back as far as 40 seconds from the time you made your save state. That means if you die in a particularly hard game, you can create a save state at the point of your failure and then rewind to a point up to about a minute before that happens, so you can try again without going through the whole level. It's a really nice bonus feature that should help with some of the older, harder games on the list. Not every game on the SNES Classic is old. Well, technically they're all old, but one most people have never played. Gamers from the 90s remember the original Star Fox as a really awesome space shooter that somehow pushed 3D graphics out of the Super Nintendo. What a lot of people don't know is there was a sequel. Star Fox 2 was almost fully completed before it got canceled by Nintendo, but they've included it on the SNES Classic as a nice bonus. Anyone who beats the first level of the original Star Fox will be given full access to its sequel, and it's a really cool title. Star Fox 2 takes a lot of the elements from the first game and just makes it more open and interesting. Instead of using a linear level progression, Star Fox 2 takes it a step further. It's got a better frame rate, about the same graphics, but a much different way to play. Instead of using linear levels, Star Fox 2 gives the players access to a galaxy map, and they can choose if they want to go fight an armada off in one section of the solar system, or try and defend a planet in another section of the solar system. There's this tactical element to the game where you plan where you fight your battles. More than that, the basic gameplay is really improved too. Again, with not only a higher frame rate, but now there are different modes. Players have different ships, can choose different pilots, and can even turn their ship into a walker to have these really cool, really weird platforming sections. Not only is it a really fun game, it's also really cool for Nintendo fans to see the influences. If you played games like Star Fox Command and Star Fox 64, you can see where those games got some of their ideas in the canceled Star Fox 2. It's a really nice bonus for people who pick up the SNES Classic Edition. The games on the SNES Classic are great, but it's also a really nice piece for people who are just looking for a nostalgic throwback. The console's form is a miniaturized Super Nintendo Entertainment System to the T. The buttons look and feel almost exactly like the real ones, with a solid click for the power on button and a nice springy reset button that just feels right. It looks identical on the surface, but not everything about it is identical. The Super Nintendo Recreation Controller might feel just right in your hands, but its connector uses the same kind of accessory port created for the Wii console. This means the new controllers won't fit into a classic Super Nintendo and can't use the fake controller ports that are on the front of the console. But that's okay. If you reach under the fake controller ports on the front of the SNES Classic, you can flip it open and it'll allow you to plug them directly into new, hidden controller ports. Just like with the NES Classic, the Super Nintendo Classic Edition controllers look and feel just like the originals, but there is a major improvement here over the controllers that were included with Nintendo's last classic console, and that's that the controller wires are actually a decent length. They're still not long enough to reach all the way across a modern-sized living room, but they're not so close that you'll be sitting on the floor looking up at your TV. It's gonna lead to a lot more comfortable of a living room such situation, and it's a nice fix. Unfortunately, some of the design problems of the original NES Classic are still there. There's no way to access the menu from the controller itself. That means if you want to use a save state or change games, you're going to have to get up off your couch and press the physical reset button on the console. This leads to a really good nostalgic retro kind of situation as far as gaming goes, but it's not the most user-friendly option. At least the mini console is designed for modern technology. It uses HDMI output to put a beautiful picture on your HD TV. No more of that fuzzy messing with old ancient analog video cables. It's really nice. Even better, you only need a micro USB cable to power it. You've probably got a few of those lying around your house. We only got to spend a few minutes with the SNES Classic, but what we did play was a great experience. It feels like a really strong follow-up to the classic console that Nintendo released last year. If you want one, start looking soon. It'll be available on September 29th for $79.99.